Hello, faithful, and welcome to the 49ers Plus podcast. I'm Al Moriello, and this is your source for the most objective 49ers discussion. Only smart takes, never any clickbait. And today kicks off the official off-season for San Francisco, at least in terms of this podcast. We're going to be talking about end-of-year press conference, what John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan had to say, players that the Niners signed to future contracts, who could actually make an impact or make the 53 come September. Robert Saleh, as we know, leaves for Tennessee. I have some thoughts there, and we'll go over defensive coordinator coaching candidates and where the Niners should end up versus where they will end up. So let's jump right in. We're basically a week removed from the Niners losing the divisional round game in Seattle. I'm recording this on Saturday morning, so 6 days removed. NFC and AFC championship games on tomorrow. Hope you enjoy. And like I said in a previous podcast, I think, anybody with the machismo, egotistical, oh, you can't have an NFC West team play the Super Bowl in Santa Clara or win the Super Bowl in Santa Clara. Well, an NFC West team is going to play the Super Bowl at Levi Stadium. It's unavoidable. If you want to root for an AFC team, that's fine. But in terms of the pecking order in the NFC West, should the Rams make the Super Bowl, it might behoove all of us as 49er fans to root for the Rams to win, because Stafford and McVay might decide to ride off into the sunset together, leaving a gaping hole at head coach, at quarterback, offensively for that team. I know it might be hard for any Niner fan to root for the Rams or the Seahawks. I just want to see a good Super Bowl. I want to see two compelling championship games. I don't care who or who does not win it on the 49ers home field, means nothing to me. But should the Rams take the Super Bowl, that could free up two big holes on their team at quarterback and head coach. There's no guarantee for that, but when you think about it, it is a possibility. Now, before we get into the end of the year press conference, some nominations that deserve recognition. Christian McCaffrey is a finalist for MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, and Comeback Player of the Year. So MVP, we know it's going to be Stafford. He's the only non-quarterback mentioned. And for those, Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs are probably better running backs. I mean, they are better running backs than McCaffrey at this point. Just goes to show the quality of season McCaffrey put together. Granted, it was on 420 plus touches total, over 100 receptions, nothing to sneeze at for a running back. Offensive Player of the Year, I don't know how good of a shot he has. Jackson Smith and Jigba tailed off. Meanwhile, Puka Nacua kind of accelerated his candidacy towards the end of the year. And Comeback Player of the Year, I think Dak is on there among other players. I looked at the list. I apologize, I didn't put him down or remember. Adam Schefter wound up tweeting, it's the first time, it may be the first time ever that one player is up for all three of those awards. Got to do research. Even Adam Schefter and his minions need to do research, because Joe Burrow was up for all three last year. Still a significant accomplishment for bouncing back from last year's Achilles bilateral tendonitis to have such a productive year offensively and to be in the MVP conversation. McCaffrey should win Comeback Player of the Year, because it's not just that he came back. He was one of the driving forces, one of the engines to get the Niners into the playoffs. He stayed healthy for 17 games, played all 17, had a high volume of touches, coming off of a season where he missed, what was it, all but 4 games? And even though McCaffrey's going to be 30 years old this upcoming season, one of the things I think we should think about, beyond the 415 plus touches that he had this season, was maybe it was a little bit of a blessing that McCaffrey missed the majority of last season. It was a go-nowhere year with other injuries anyway, plus Nick Sorensen at defensive coordinator, plus Jake Moody costing at least 1, if not 2 games on special teams. It was a go-nowhere year. And maybe only playing in 4-ish games preserved McCaffrey's body somewhat. Now, he paid for it this year, right? But preserved his body, and he hasn't had the major, the knee reconstruction. He's had obviously the PCL sprain, the bilateral Achilles tendonitis, again, not a tear. I know he's had some shoulder issues beyond the divisional round with that stinger, but nothing that required either surgery or significant surgery. It's mainly been rest. And yes, 30 years old is generally the time where running backs tend to decline. And if any one of us, I think it's fair to say that McCaffrey at 29 probably doesn't have the burst or the speed that he did at 22, at 25. Nobody, no one's aging like wine or cheese in the NFL. So even when folks said that, McCaffrey looks like he lost a step, one, it was in reference to video clips where McCaffrey wasn't running full speed in training camp. Two, you know what the agenda is. It's for engagement and hate mongering and clicks and drama building and all that stuff. But I think the underlying core is right. He's probably not as explosive, as fast, as twitchy, as quick as he was 5 or 7 years ago. It's the nature of the position. It's a war of attrition. Didn't mean for that to rhyme. But I think he still could be a very productive running back into his early 30s, the way he takes care of his body, how much time and money he puts into it. And if he isn't the lead, back in maybe 2 or 3 years, he would be a ridiculously productive third down back. And I can see the Niners structuring a contract where he gets a fair base salary, a fair guarantee, signing bonus, whatever it may be, not market value, but fair. And then incentive based, that if Shanahan's going to want to run him into the ground, then he gets paid for that, like Juwan Jennings' contract this past season for yards, for receptions, for touchdowns, if McCaffrey hits certain markers. Seems completely fair to me. Let's just kind of dovetail. Shanahan nominated as a finalist for Coach of the Year. Did not win it in 2019 when he went to the Super Bowl. Did not win it in 2023 when they went to the Super Bowl. Are not going to the Super Bowl this year, so maybe it's his lucky year to win it. I mean, you have Ben Johnson, you have Liam Cohen, you have Mike McDonald, really good and strong candidates. Seahawks were 10-7 last year. They won 4 more games. Niners were 6-11 year. They won 6 games. Bears were a bottom feeder. Ben Johnson completely turned that around with the second year growth from Caleb Williams. Liam Cohen, Jacksonville, bottomish feeder, turned them around. Couldn't win. Did they win their first round playoff game? Yeah, no, they didn't. And the Bills, they lost at home in the wild card round to the Bills. Shanahan is in the mix. But make no mistake, too, Shanahan doesn't do that without Robert Saleh, without this draft class, without better special teams. It is a holistic improvement that the Niners made, but Shanahan's the one overseeing everything. So I would say he has a really good shot, especially where the Niners were last year and where everybody was writing them off, that the window's closed, that they're going to be maybe an 8-win team, and how they wildly surpassed expectations. So that kind of brings us to the end of the year press conference. And anybody complaining about what was said or not said during an end of year press conference needs to get their head checked. Do you think Lynch or Shanahan is going to give you anything juicy or salacious to really say, oh, yeah, I knew it. I knew that Brandon Ayuk poured sugar in Kyle Shanahan's gas tank. And I knew that something was going on behind the scenes with player XY. Like, they're going to give you politically correct, hopefully truthful-ish response. And they take the truth to a certain level. Like I've always said, like I can give you, I or they can give you 70 or 80% truth and save that extra 20 to 30% for behind closed doors. They don't have to be fully transparent at all times, but they're also not Bill Belichick, who gives you nothing. They gave you answers that were kind of by the book and things that were obvious. And if you're complaining about that, it's just because you are a miserable content creator generally that's complaining, why didn't, reporters ask this, or why didn't they answer better? It's part of the game. You have, misery mongers, thank God you have Grant Cohn. Did you ever listen to Grant Cohn when he asks a question? I think he knows he's the little brother. He's the neophyte that's only there because his father was in the media previously. Anytime anyone asks a question, it's well thought out, articulated at a normal pace. His question, this was his response. I'm not going to get it right verbatim. Kyle Shanahan, do you think that you're going to trade for a wide receiver in the offseason? Do you think that's something that you're going to be interested in? Says it that fast. Like someone is going to slap him in the face before he can get it all out saying, Grant Cohn, shut the fuck up. You're shit. Or in a cartoon, he's waiting for that big, long hook cane to come from the side of the stage to just kind of drag him out of the press conference. Every time he asks a question, he has to have it at a ×3 vocal speed. I don't know why. I don't know if that's just the way he talks. I don't listen to his content because it's shit. Yeah, it's great for the misery monger fans out there. I think it's garbage. But I think that was, I've noticed that in every press conference, and I'm intrigued as to why. But here's some of the things that Lynch said. It's safe to say that Ayuk has played his last snap with the 49ers. No shit. Now, the only fine points that they have to figure out is, are they going to release him? If they do, I'm sure he's going to be a June 1st designation. That would free up $8 million more on the 2026 salary cap. If they trade him, they have to wait until after June 1st on the calendar to trade him to get that same sort of savings on the salary cap. And by then, you'll be through free agency, you'll be through the draft, and teams will more than likely have figured out or solidified their wide receiver positions. Will there be a team or two that could make a trade for him? Yeah, because you saw, what was it, last year, 2 years ago, the Browns were in play, the Patriots were in play, the Steelers were in play for a trade, and Ayuk or Shanahan nixed all three of those. I believe they should try to get something for him. And Ayuk hasn't returned to the team since September, right? Who cares if he stays away in OTAs or any sort of mandatory mini camps that happen before June 1st? He's non-existent now. He's a member of the team. And who knows if the Niners are going to go after any more guarantees based on this whole situation. But he's an asset that if they could trade him, they should. Debo fetched a 5th. Even a 5th round pick is better than nothing. A 6th round pick is better. I mean, I'm not going to go nuts saying like, oh, they could take an additional 7th, because it's still, and you still need a team to want to take on that contract. Although they could potentially work out some sort of a trade where the new contract is waiting. When he gets the new team, they rip up the old one and he gets a new team that's a new contract that's maybe more team friendly for, a cap hit for the first year. More than likely, Ayuk's going to get released with a June 1st designation. The cap hit is way too prohibitive I think it might be close to $35 million. All said, if they release him before June 1st, and a team is probably going to want him on a 1-year prove-it deal. So Brandon Ayuk fucked everything up in the most astronomical way. Team proved that they wanted him. Yeah, him blowing out the knee was awful, but the team, even some of the reports that the team had buyer's remorse after the contract, they still signed him. Now, are you going to have buyer's remorse after a player blows out his ACL and MCL or whatever it is? I mean, you can't see that from happening, but we knew he was going to start slow because he missed training camp. None of that is new. Long story short, with Ayuk, I would love to see them get something for him. I don't care if they hold on to them until June 2nd. And I'm sure non-10 creators are going to make a big deal about, why are they still holding on to Ayuk? Because of the cap clowns. They can release him. He can go wherever. I doubt he's going to go to the Rams or the Seahawks. I mean, you never know what those teams' cap situations are. He probably just runs right to Washington and Jaden Daniels. But the Ayuk situation could be figured out as early as the first week or the second week of March when the new league year starts, or it could drag on until the second week or the first week of June. Either way, we'll have stuff to talk about, so it's not the worst thing in the world. Transitioning from Ayuk to Jennings, per John Lynch, we would love to have Juwan Jennings back. I'm not going to go too much into this now because that might be the next podcast, or as we talk about the Niners free agents and who they should resign. Juwan Jennings is 29 years old. This is going to be his last chance at a lucrative contract. The size of the contract, or if he gets every bag imaginable, is going to come from a team other than San Francisco. For reasons of youth, wanting to get faster, Juwan's a dog, and I think he's a solid number 2 receiver. But the Niners have to figure out, who are potential free agent receiver targets. We're going to talk about that in future podcasts. Do they go after a receiver in the draft in like the first, to me, 2 rounds would basically guarantee a receiver gets playing time unless they're hurt for the, all of training camp. And even then, I think Shanahan it would behoove him to get a first or second round pick back into the lineup versus a 5th round pick like Jordan Watkins. Shanahan and Lynch said that they're going to meet and obviously talk about the offseason plan. Right now, I don't see Jennings as part of it unless he takes a hometown discount, and who knows how crazy the wide receiver market is going to get based on the players that are available. And lastly, Lynch said he was going to look into the whole electrical substation thing, if it's a concern that players, current and past players like Delaney Walker bringing up, if it's going to impact free agents. This can go a lot of different ways. If you're on social media, I'm sure you've seen people talk about the images of, the tree line near the substation. The trees are basically dead with no leaves, and trees across the street or farther away, have leaves. We do know, or I'm sure we're all kind of familiar with, folks that live near or under those big electrical towers that, carry electrical wires from one area to another, that there's been instances of increased cancer risk. So whatever this is, RF radiation, whatever the right nomenclature is, there could be something to it. Now, at the same time, I know, and I've read about my wireless router, that you should basically be at least 3 feet away from a wireless router. And I have it upstairs near my home computer or my gaming computer. And I'm like, 4 or 5 feet at a certain distance. This RF stuff, Wi-Fi stuff, electrical interference, whatever it may be, dissipates. And the substation is not on top of the training facility, right? There's a street or however much space between that and the training facility. The Niners are on the training field for what? 2 hours, 3 days a week? More so in the summertime. I think this is much ado about nothing. I think it's worth checking into it. Now, regardless, the Niners, no matter what, the Niners, independent research, they're going to find nothing. Because if they find something, there could be lawsuits from older players or players that have gotten injured, even though you can't prove causation about injury with the substation stuff. It's a shame it's gotten this much national recognition. I think Joe Rogan was talking about it on his podcast, which is fitting because even though he does talk about some interesting and factual stuff, it is a breeding ground for conspiracy theory stuff also, which may have to do something with the fact that he's like 5'4", 5'5", little Napoleon, syndrome kind of dude. We'll see what comes out of that. The Niners have been practicing there for 30 years. The substation, I think, was revamped maybe 10 or 15 years ago. I don't know exactly how this is going to shake out, but it's going to be we found nothing, because if the Niners uncover them finding something, it's going to cause a huge problem. So even if there is something, it's going to be swept under the rug. Now, Kyle was asked about, would he like to have Mac Jones back? And he would. And he and John said they envision Mac Jones being part of the team next year, as do I. Anybody that's looking to trade Mac Jones, I would want an insurance policy at behind the most important position in professional sports. What is Mac Jones going to garner now? When he was playing well during the season, and this never would have happened, if they could have traded him before the trade deadline, when his value was at its highest, maybe they could have gotten a third, maybe a second. But now, after everything is cooled off, now Malik fucking Willis is going to be like the hot free agent quarterback. What a sad state of affairs quarterbacking is in general, where teams are going to be outbidding each other for Malik Willis, and that he's going to go wherever That's not under Mike LaFleur, and he's going to shit all over himself. Niners expect to have Mac Jones back. I expect to have Mac Jones back unless a team offers, and I know people are going to say it's ridiculous, a first or a second plus. Because what is a third or fourth? And I don't know if people are floating out a fourth. Unless the Niners nail the pick, which is possible, what are the Niners going to get? A rotational D tackle? A backup corner? Maybe they draft a tackle in the third round that becomes the heir apparent to Trent Williams, but then that player is not helping you on the field this year unless Trent Williams gets hurt. And I understand if Brock is healthy, Mac's not going to help you on the field this year. But what's the alternative? The Niners did re-sign Adrian Martinez. We're going to get to that in a few minutes. They have Curtis Rourke, who took a red shirt this year. Is anyone listening or in the Niner fandom comfortable with Adrian Martinez or Curtis Rourke as your direct backup to Brock? Hell no. And I'm not 100% I know Gardner Minshew was available, then he tore his ACL late in the season for Kansas City. Beyond him, who's going to be available that you'd feel comfortable swapping Mac Jones out for as Brock's backup if a team really puts on a full court press and says, yeah, we'll give you a first, we'll give you a second and a fifth, whatever it might be. I think Mac Jones is worth getting back. And then they have the possibility of, if he leaves in early 2027, they'll get maybe a fourth or fifth round pick in 2028. So it's got to be at least better than a fourth. But if I'm going to, if you're coming to me forget bridge starter, because Mac Jones could light it up and actually be the starter, then yeah, maybe I'll give it to you for a third that can turn into a second if he starts 8 games, and it can turn into a second plus if he starts 8 games and throws for 2,500, make some sort of escalator incentives that you can get more or better picks if you trade him. I think Mac Jones proved his value to his team. There's no playoffs without him, and I would hold on to him. Kyle's also excited about rookie Jordan James and his quote, wish we could have gotten him more involved. Well, Kyle, the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season, he was active. Isaac Guerrero was inactive. You, the running back coach, Bobby Turner, whatever, just decided to give him no touches behind McCaffrey and Brian Robinson. So, yeah, again, press conference lingo. Yes, you're excited about a rookie going into his second year. I'm sure he's even excited about Jordan Watkins. And he went into that whole discussion about Watkins was so behind the 8 ball, missing training camp, had the calf pull or whatever the injury was. Then he was buried on the depth chart. Jordan Watkins was not better than any receiver in front of him. Not better than any receiver in front of him. So he's not going to get playing time. And he did come out and say, listen, if it's a lost season and we're just playing out the string, yeah, then you can see what you have in some rookies, but not before then. And I agree. You don't go experimenting with players when every game since Brock came back was meaningful, to win 6 in a row, to get the game for the number 1 seed in Santa Clara. Then you're in the playoffs. You're going to put him in against Philadelphia. You're going to put him in against Seattle. Of course you're not. Yeah, the speed element might be nice, but there's no rapport with Brock. Brock's not going to feel comfortable throwing to Jordan Watkins. Now, a full training camp, preseason games, getting him involved early, especially if the receiver position is in flux to begin the season, that's a different story. But I'm totally aligned with Kyle saying you don't just throw a player in that hasn't been involved in the program for a while just to mix things up. If an injury happened, and Kyle said this, and again, I agree, it would have bumped Watkins up. It would have made him active. Doesn't mean he would have played, but he would have been active. For how much better that is for anybody that's holding a candle for Jordan Watkins. Now, Jordan James, let's see what the Niners do. Now, Kyle and John traded for Brian Robinson for a reason. They didn't feel comfortable with Guerrero as the backup. They didn't feel comfortable with Jordan James as a rookie as the backup. And I'm not sure if Kyle's going to feel comfortable with these 3 running backs, McCaffrey, of course, James and Guerrero, as your 3 going into next season. He feels like the type of coach that if I'm going to give another running back 10 touches behind McCaffrey, and 10 is like the high watermark, then I want to feel like I have trust in that running back, and that feels like a veteran. They're not going to break the bank for a veteran. It should be a veteran that's going to come at a minimum, maybe $2 million for 2 years or something. And then maybe that bumps Guerrero down to number 4. I don't know what it's going to be, but it's not going to be a draft pick. It's not going to be McCaffrey, a second-year player, a third-year player that got bump down to inactive, and a draft pick as your 4 running backs, too much youth and uncertainty behind McCaffrey. They're going to, I would imagine, bring somebody in. Better not be Patrick Taylor for the 90-man roster, cool, but it better be someone, a Najee Harris, I know is a free agent. It might not be the greatest thing in the world, and he's battled injuries this year with the Chargers, but I could see somebody like that if they're going to come cheap. If not, he may have to bite the bullet and go with either James or Garendo. A lot to be resolved. And lastly, of course, Ricky Pearsall, fans calling him Ricky Glass and putting those images up on social, missed 9 regular season games in the wild card game versus Philly. He was asked about, is there any way that he can prepare to not re-injure himself? And Shanahan's response back, and I was glad he said it, was, well, can he prepare to not land on his knee? Impossible in this game. You can, run out of bounds more. You can kind of go down more and not take hits. But football, violent acts are going to happen. He missed 9 regular season games, so 11 games missed in total. Through the first 4 weeks of the season, Ricky went 20 receptions for 327 yards. That means he's averaging 5 receptions and 82 yards a game. For a full season, that's 85 for 1394. Now, obviously, there's questions if Ricky could play a full season. But if 85 for 1394 is maybe the high watermark, would you take 70 for 1150? That's like, say, missing 3 games. I would. I'd absolutely take that. So would Kyle. So would John. If, a player's going to get banged up a bit. And that's not to even mention toward the end of the season, he went 6 for 96 against Tennessee, 5 for 85 against Chicago, where he re-injured his knee, played through it. Then obviously was out against Seattle and Philly and was not nearly right against, Seattle. You can't count on, I don't think you can count on Pearsall. The injury stuff, a lot of it has to do with bad luck. Fuck the substation, bad luck, right? Again, PCL, you saw how long it knocked McCaffrey out for. Same thing for Pearsall, and it's one of those things, because it's a weight-bearing joint, that he just needs the adequate amount of time to rest and rehab it. I think you can potentially bank on him being healthy or healthier. I don't know if you can bank on him being a number 1. I think he's a high-end number 2. I would love to be proven wrong. That just then goes to what are the Niners doing? Can they find or trade for a bona fide number 1? Can they find one in the draft that can develop into that? It's not Juwan Jennings, guys, obviously. Receiver position in flux, but Kyle was just as skeptical as I am in terms of people questioning Ricky's health, when a lot of it is just bad friggin' luck. Now, future deals quickly. These are players that were basically on the practice squad or just not on a team's final roster to end the season. So on offense, quarterback Adrian Martinez signed. Offensive lineman Zachary Thomas, Brandon Parker, and Isaac Alarcon, and Drake Nugent, lineman, tight end Hayden Rucci, wide receivers Malik Turner and Junior Bergen. Of those players, players that I can see making a real push for the 53 next year would be Zachary Thomas and Brandon Parker. So Brandon Parker could be the swing tackle. I would love to see the Niners draft one, but he could be the swing tackle. And Zachary Thomas was a left and right tackle throughout his college career, bumped into guard. I think he was drafted by the Packers in 2022, the 6th round. So he could play inside. Are we going to say he's a candidate to replace Ben Barch or Spencer Burford at left guard? Maybe, right? They signed him, maybe, but I anticipate a veteran and a draft pick coming into battle for that. And lastly, Junior Bergen. So this past year's 7th round pick out of Montana, return specialist, did not make the team, was on the practice squad all year. We'll see what happens with Sky Moore, but Bergen, with maybe a year of seasoning practice, maybe he hits the weight room a little bit, because I think he was like at least 10 pounds lighter than Sky Moore. But generally the same frame, 5'10", fast, doesn't add that much as a receiver, just a returner. Maybe Bergen can be in play. And on defense, it's defensive linemen or D tackles Evan Anderson and Sebastian Valtez, defensive ends William Bradley King and Andrew Farmer, linebacker Jalen Graham, cornerback Eli Apple, safety Derek Forrest, and cornerback safety Derek Canteen. Of those 3 players that I think could make a push for the 53, it's the 2 D tackles, Evan Anderson and Sebastian Valtez. Evan Anderson has starting experience with the team, was on the practice squad all of 2025, but was got some starter reps in 2024. Sebastian Valdez, I know, was everybody's favorite training camp hero this past year. Baby Hulk or whatever out of the University of Washington. The Niners only have 2 defensive tackles signed for next year. It's CJ West and Alfred Collins. So they're immediately on the 90-man roster is a place for Evan Anderson and Sebastian Valdez. I anticipate at least one D tackle coming in from free agency. I anticipate at least one D tackle being drafted by San Francisco, and they need to get bigger and stronger and more stout up front. So I think there's a place for both Anderson and Valdez, and Eli Apple also, right? Early 30 years old, starting experience in the league, could be a decent depth piece behind Demo and Renardo Green. It's Demo, Green, Upton Stout, and Darrell Luter is on the last year of his deal. So there's 2 spots open at corner, or at the most 2 spots open, or someone could bump Darrell Luter off. So I think Eli Apple is going to be on the 90-man roster and a good chance to compete for one of those 6 cornerback roles. So let's go from future deals. We're at the 30-minute mark. I didn't think it was going to go this long, this podcast. So Robert Saleh, as we know, leaving for the Tennessee Titans. So there's only 32 of these jobs on the planet. And my first thought was, wow, that was one of the least attractive openings you can have. Like, who knows what Cam Ward has? They have nothing on offense. They're a middling defense. Between Tennessee, Arizona, and Las Vegas, they were one of the 3 least attractive openings that Saleh could have interviewed for. I think he interviewed for Buffalo. I'm not sure if he interviewed for Baltimore, Arizona, Las Vegas. The Giants already had Jim Harbaugh as head coach. And I know there's, some others that I'm not, discussing, but because there were so many openings this year, mathematically, that could mean there might not be as many openings next year. Now, the Jets may be an opening. Aaron Glenn might get fired if they suck again. He's not going back there, obviously, right? So LaFleur is getting re-signed if he hasn't already by the Packers. So there might not be attractive openings next year or as many. Saleh may love the Nashville area. Coming out of New York and San Francisco, might like the non-spotlight of Nashville, Tennessee, to help build his, team the way he wants to. And he is a CEO type. He is a leader of men. Obviously, more of the defensive slant, but if he brings in the right OC and DC, I think he'll do okay. And by okay, meaning like they are the worst team in their division. They can only go up. Expectations for Robert Saleh in Tennessee might be the least of any coach that's going to go anywhere outside of maybe Las Vegas. But then there's going to be more buzz because you're going to have the first pick and Fernando Mendoza, and you're playing in Las Vegas, which glitzy town, even though the Raiders, it's a tourist town. So how much they have home field advantage is to be determined. Now, Saleh did a great job with the young players, right? The first 5 draft picks were young players. Really, only Nick Martin didn't get playing time on defense, and reestablishing how the Niners should be built or need to be built on defense, meaning getting bigger on the D-line, especially at DN. So gone is Leonard Floyd. They retained Yetur Gross-Matos. They bring in Michael Williams as their first-round pick. They traded for someone like Keon White. They brought in Cleveland Farrell, again, like a 6'4", 260, 265 DN, not someone that's, 230, 235, 240 that can hold the edge a little bit better. Now, did, moves like that, if Leonard Floyd was maybe their 3rd down rush specialist, would they have improved their sack numbers from 18 on the year to maybe 22? Maybe, but the Niners wanted to get stronger against the run, as the last 6 weeks of the 2024 season were abysmal. And they did that, except for the fact that the lasting, lingering taste in our mouths are going to be what the Seahawks did to them in week 18 in the divisional round. And the Niners were better against Philadelphia in the wild card round. Under Saleh, the run D was hot and cold, right? You had games where they gave up a ton. You had games like against the Bears and the Falcons, 2 good running teams that were not running the ball well. In the Bears case, they knew that they can throw it on San Francisco. So the times that the run D played well, I think it was a mirage based on how well passing offenses were performing. But they couldn't generate many turnovers, was more than the first half of the season without interception, and obviously 0 pass rush. The whole defense, even though the philosophy, and it's not just the philosophy of on the field per Saleh, it's how they conduct themselves with this all gas, no brakes mentality. is really bend but don't break. But as I've been saying for a couple of years now, better quarterbacks will force that defense to bend all the way down the field and ultimately break in the red zone. The most disappointing aspect of Saleh's defense was not being able to manufacture pressure, not being able to push the envelope, sending more players more often, not playing downhill, and being beholden to a four-man rush as much as they were maybe when they had the 2019 line in San Francisco, even when 4 was not getting there. And let's be honest, 5 wasn't getting there a whole lot. Neither was 6. They did have 2 sacks on Sam Darnold in the divisional round. They lost by 35, so obviously sacks don't equate to wins or shrinking any sort of scoring deficit. But the Niners' blitz rate this past year was 21.7% of snaps. It's not dropbacks, it's snaps. That ranks 23rd. Interestingly enough, they rank in between the Texans and the Seahawks. Teams that don't need to blitz because they have a good front four. So the philosophy, they are so stubborn with the philosophy, and we understand that rushing 4 and dropping 7 against basically 4 or 5 in coverage should put you at a numbers advantage. But when quarterbacks have 3, 4, 5 or more seconds to throw, better quarterbacks are going to find players open, especially a team that plays predominantly zone. Not all the time, but predominantly zone behind those 4 rushers. At the top of the blitz chart, you have the Vikings at 48%, the Falcons at 34%, the Broncos at 32%, and the Chiefs at 31%. Vikings, a team, not a great front 4, but Brian Flores doesn't care. He makes the defense better and more aggressive as a whole. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts with Minnesota. Falcons invested on the D-line, brought in Leonard Floyd, brought in James Pierce from Tennessee in the draft, and I think they brought in another draft pick as well. Broncos, obviously with Nick Bonito and others, can get pressure with 4. And the Chiefs, Steve Spagnuolo is going to have a nice diverse blitz package to get pressure. That is not where the Niners are going to be. And something like the Vikings blitzing nearly 50% of the time is a bit much. But they had a great defense last year. We're going to go over some of the numbers, and the defense this year was pretty darn good as well. Now, Brian Flores is out of the running. Let's talk candidates. He re-signed for 3 years with the Vikings. He was never going to be someone that Kyle was going to sign. Let's go through the last 3 years with Flores in Minnesota. He's been the DC for only 3 years, and it's all been with Minnesota. 2023, 16th overall in yards, 8th against the run, 24th against the pass, 13th in points. 24, 16th overall, 2nd against the run, 28th against the pass, and 5th in points. 2025, 3rd overall, 21st against the run, 2nd against the pass, and 7th in points. So always pretty decent, top half of the league in points. I don't know how 2025 completely flip-flopped, that their run defense got worse and their pass defense got better, but they are getting pressure, getting heat with really a collection of average players on defense. But that's what Belichick was doing, right? In the heyday of the Patriots. Yeah, you had like a Lawyer Malloy at safety and Ty Law at cornerback. You had a Teddy Bruschi, but these weren't like super athletic game record type players. And the Niners rely too much on Nick Bosa, who is more of a game plan against. He's not a game wrecker like Lawrence Taylor, Reggie White, Bruce Smith, Myles Garrett. All-pro, Pro Bowl player, but I don't put Nick Bosa in that category. Brian Flores, who knows how he would have done with this many young players, but with the players under, getting a year in the system, getting back, hopefully closer to the start of the year. Warren will be ready for the start of the year. Hopefully Bosa's ready sometime end of September or October, and they bring in another rusher in free agency or the draft. The linebacker position hopefully gets solidified somehow, and corners. They have pieces. They have more pieces than the Vikings do. If Brian Flores was the defensive coordinator of the Niners statistically would be a better defense than Minnesota, and Minnesota pretty good. The pass defense for 23 and 24, whatever reason, not great. But every year he figures out something to take away, whether it's the run or the pass, and pretty decent with points. Now, Jim Schwartz, still under contract for a year with the Browns, interviewed twice for their head coach opening. I mean, I know they're going to go through their due diligence. They don't want to lose Schwartz, and I'm sure if a coach comes in, they're not going to want to lose him either. So I can't imagine Jim Schwartz going anywhere. But let's go last 3 years. 2023, first overall in yards, 11th against the run, first against the pass, 13th in points. 2024, 19th overall, 21st against the run, 12th against the pass, 27th in points. And this year, a return to form with a friggin' bad team, 4th overall in yards, 16th against the run, 3rd against the pass, and 14th in points. Jim Schwartz would be a great hire. It's Kyle's kryptonite. Kyle would be going against him every day in practice, figuring out ways to beat that defense. And hopefully Schwartz would have some knowledge or insight onto how to beat other defenses, including what Mike McDonald is doing in Seattle. But Jim Schwartz probably isn't going anywhere. Raheem Morris, I think people are romanticizing what Raheem Morris was when he was a DC with the Rams. 3-year DC, 21, 22, and 23, before being the head coach of the Falcons for 2 years. In 2021, 17th overall, 8th against the run, 22nd against the pass, 15th points scored. 2022, 19th overall, 2nd against the run, 21st against the pass, 21st in points. And 2023, 20th overall, 21st against the run, 20th against the pass, and 19th in points. I think people are enamored with Raheem Morris because he's the unknown, right? Like, we're going to get to Gus Bradley in a second, but what could Raheem Morris do with this defense? He doesn't necessarily run the wide 9 the way that Jim Schwartz does. Brian Flores certainly doesn't. And the Rams at that point, before the reset happened in 2024, where they brought in, young players, draft picks, Jared Verse, Brandon Fisk, among others, they were struggling, kind of a bit. They still had Aaron Donald, but a bit from a personnel perspective. Raheem Morris, I think, would be an interesting addition. And I think I would even feel like, what could Morris do as opposed to Gus Bradley? Now, Bradley's been a DC in the league for 12 years. Started with Seattle, built the Legion of Boom defense, left to be the head coach of the Jaguars. That's when Dan Quinn came in. And if you want to say, took that defense over the top to a Super Bowl victory, then a Super Bowl appearance. Then he winds up leaving to, I guess, at some point in the near future to coach the Falcons. But DC for Seattle, the Chargers, where he had a handful of good seasons. Las Vegas wasn't that great, in Indianapolis, not that great given the personnel that they had. So 2022, 2023, 2024, let's do it for Gus Bradley for completeness' sake. 15th overall, 21st against the rush, 11th against the pass, 28th in points. 2023, 24th overall, 24th against the run, 16th against the pass, 28th in points. In 2024, 29th overall, 24th against the run, 26th against the pass, and 24th in points. That actually might have been 22, 23, 24. Yeah, because this is 2025. Sorry. So not great. Indianapolis did not have a lot of pieces to work with. Going on, some social media and message boards for Colt fans, did not have great things to say about Gus Bradley. Love him as a person, says he's a great guy, leader, motivator, but plays a really soft zone defense. Historically, he blitzes less than Robert Saleh. Robert Saleh blitzed around 22% of the time. Gus Bradley in these 3 years with the Colts, high water mark was 17%. So for someone like me who's wants to play downhill, who wants the personnel to come at you in waves and really flex on defense and try to dictate defensively what the offense is going to do, Gus Bradley right now is not that higher. He wants to keep it simple like Saleh does, simple so your players can play fast. When he does blitz, for what it's worth, the vast majority of the time he sends 6 for what it's worth. And Kyle was asked about, is Gus Bradley the leading internal candidate? He absolutely is. KJ Wright, Daniel Bullock, there's nobody else. You're not going to hand over this team who took a monumental leap forward from 2024 to this past season and hand the reins over to a newbie play caller. I don't care who they were denied an interview request of the D-backs, defensive backs coach for the Falcons, who was an African-American, so that would just satisfy the Rooney Rule to interview one minority candidate. It might be two, but from what I read, it just has to be one, I think, for coordinators. Don't hold me to that. The problem with the defense that Saleh ran this year, the year before with Nick Sorensen, the year before with Wilkes, even though Steve Wilkes wasn't his defense, he was kind of forced to run the wide 9 cover 3, is it's a defense that will run great when you have dudes at every single level, multiple dudes at every single level. And obviously you can't use the Legion of Boom defense. They had dudes everywhere. That was a historically good defense. It's easy, like playing Madden and just saying, oh, my front four is phenomenal. My linebackers are great. My secondary is great. We're just going to rush four, and see if you can beat our 7 athletes on the back end. Now, did Seattle blitz every so often? Sure. Every team blitzes. But that's a nice fallback to rely on, like the 2019 49ers, when you had D Ford-ish, you had Bosa, you had Armstead and Buckner, and a line that stayed healthy. But you also have to make sure that your backups are dudes as well. And it's hard to have like 8, 9 dudes on your defensive line because backups are backups for a reason. Seattle, even this year, is built just big, strong, fast, just can affect the line defensively, and that dictates and helps what they want to do on the back end. And for the Niners to beat Seattle moving forward, they have to be very, very patient. And that's what you always hear about, this Seattle style cover 3 defense. Take what they give you. Be patient going down the field. They're waiting for you to make a mistake. The Niners couldn't cause mistakes this year. Couldn't get to the quarterback. Couldn't get sacks. Couldn't get pressures. Couldn't get turnovers. There was no mistakes being made. And for every Eric Kendricks breakup on 4th down in Philadelphia to seal the game, there was just as many, or for every one of those breakups, there were 2 times where a team scored a touchdown, got a field goal, converted a 3rd down. It's not that this defense is old and offenses have figured it out. It's that this defense thrives with all pros and Pro Bowlers nearly everywhere as starters. And while the Niners will be getting back Bosa to whatever degree of health the first year back, we'll see. And they're getting back Warner, and they're getting back Demo. But not getting back. They have Demo. And Upton Stout is kind of on the Upton Stout and Malik Mustafa. I don't know how much you want to say they're like a dude or there's someone that is going to take such a big leap to make this, defensive bully. They don't have the players in quantity that Seattle did. That's why it was a historic defense. It's so rare. When you talk about these defenses, it's the Legion of Boom. It's the 85 Bears. It's the 2000 Ravens. It's the Steelers in the 70s, right? Defenses that imposed their will on offenses. Denver's got a nice defense this year. Buffalo with Josh Allen throwing or having 4 turnovers and no receivers still put up 30 on them. And we'll see what New England does. The Rams have a nice active type of defense. Philadelphia's got a lot of dudes on defense and Vic Fangio calling the plays, and they still couldn't beat the Niners. Mainly because Kevin Batul on that offense was terrible and Saleh and company did just enough. But I think the scheme, and Kyle has come out and said it, the scheme is not the same in 2025 as it was in 2017, 18, and 19. It has evolved. So let's all not just say, oh, they're running the same exact defense since Kyle's been here. There's been evolutions and wrinkles every year. But I think San Francisco as a team, being honest with the players they have, and who knows who they're going to bring in free. They're going to have it between $40 and $50 million in cap space, $8 million more if Brandon Ayuk is designated a June 1st cap cut, $24 million more in cap space if they decide to move on from Trent Williams as a June 1st cap cut, although they're not going to do that. They could extend him and free up $10, $12 million. I'm not sure how I feel about that when he's 38 years old. As long as he doesn't want a market deal, maybe a fair team discount deal, maybe for a year or two, maybe. Who knows how many players they're going to bring in? How much of a splash the Niners are going to make in free agency? They need a receiver. They need help on the O-line. Right now, it's just left guard. Are they going to bring in a veteran running back behind McCaffrey? What do they do at tight end with Kittle? Probably not going to be ready to start the season, I would guess. And of course, defensively, you need help at D tackle. You need another D end, free agent plus draft. Are you going to bring anyone else in at linebacker? I think your 3 corners are set. Are you going to bring in a ball hawk at safety? The Niners are going to have enough money to fill some holes. I don't think they're going to fill all of them, and you can't count on rookies to be like legitimate hole fillers year one. And who knows how much of a hole filler Alfred Collins, who needs shoulder surgery, I think, CJ West, Michael Williams coming off of an ACL, Upton Stout, Nick Martin if he plays, Jordan Watkins, Jordan James, Connor Colby, Curtis Rourke. Who knows how much of an impact or next step this team is going to take? But hearing that Gus Bradley's going to be the hire. If he's not, we would all be wildly shocked. And if he's going to be the hire, I think he needs to be empowered to, let's get a little bit more aggressive. Let's get a little bit more aggressive than what he's historically been doing. It's great that he's a veteran play caller, and there might not, and I do not want a first-time play caller for this defense. I don't want it. I think it's worth interviewing someone like Raheem Morris. People are mentioning interviewing the Texans defensive coordinator. I don't know if he's under contract. If he is, the Texans can completely block that. Seattle has a DC, but and again, if you have a DC, you have to request permission, but it's Mike McDonald that calls the defensive plays. There's a comfort level that Shanahan's going to have with Bradley, but a Gus Bradley hire would be the safe hire, and it's going to be a little bit more of the same. George Kittle midseason saying, we have a young defense. Robert Saleh's doing a great job. We're going to need to score 30 plus to win, to help our defense out and to win games. And that might be the mandate again next year. And it shouldn't be. Like, this should be a team with players coming back, and you would think free agents that they bring in and a draft class that maybe only need to score 24 to win most games. 20, 21, maybe sometimes you could hold a team under 3 touchdowns. But there should be a complementary aspect to each side of the ball where Kyle is creative and aggressive and toes that line between aggressive and reckless on offense. Where is the towing the line between, I don't know, moderately aggressive and aggressive on defense that a DC should bring, and that DC is not Gus Bradley. I'm not going to hate the hire. And Shanahan said that it's going to be figured out this upcoming week. There's only so much they can do with Jim Schwartz, who's under contract. They need the Browns to hire a coach and fire Jim Schwartz for him to potentially come to San Francisco, or trade something for him. Trade a 3rd round pick, a 4th round pick for Jim Schwartz, whatever. More than likely, it's going to be Gus Bradley. We just need to hope that he saw what Saleh was doing and adjusts his system, which is called people have called it a static defense, because he doesn't do much, and realize I don't have the players I did in Seattle in 2009 and 10 and 11. So I can't play that. I mean, granted, he hasn't had it, again, a couple good seasons with the Chargers, but he hasn't had it anywhere, and not with the Colts the past 3 seasons. And he didn't learn to ratchet up the pressure. 7 months until preseason games to figure out what this Niner defense is going to look like. When the Gus Bradley hire happens, it's going to be met with pissing and moaning and complaining. I'm not going to feel great about it. I'll feel better about it than Nick Sorensen. At least Bradley has worked with Robert Saleh this year to see what he wanted to employ and how the defense should be run. But it's going to be Bradley's baby moving forward if he is the hire. You just have to hope that the Niners get healthy, bring in some players that are dudes to help Bradley run his defense as efficiently and as statically aggressive as possible. So that's going to conclude the podcast for today. Went way longer than I thought it was going to go because I didn't think there was that much to talk about. But like always, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to make us part of your viewing or listening routine. Next podcast will be sometime in the upcoming week in the Wednesday to Friday time frame. Potentially earlier if Gus Bradley is the hire, but then again, we all know it's going to be the hire, so no need for me to jump on a podcast. AFC Championship, NFC Championship. I live in the Northeast. I don't know where you guys live. Do you live anywhere in the eastern part of the country where a whole lot of ice, rain, and shit are coming our way? Stay indoors, stay warm, stay safe. And like always, whatever you are all doing between now and we speak again, stay happy, healthy, and safe, faithful. We will talk soon. Take care.